In the quiet darkness of a moonlit night, while most of humanity sleeps, our celestial companion exerts its silent influence. The moon, Earth's only natural satellite, has been humanity's constant cosmic partner for 4.5 billion years. Yet its subtle effects on our lives remain largely unrecognized by most people going about their daily routines. Dr. Yuri Ramirez adjusts his telescope on the observatory deck, focusing on the luminous orb hanging in the night sky. People think the moon's influence on Earth is limited to the tides, he says, checking the calibration. But what we have discovered over the past few decades tells a far more intricate story. His colleague, Dr. Wendy Wilcox, nods in agreement as she reviews data on her tablet. It is astonishing how deeply the lunar cycle is woven into the fabric of life on our planet, including human life. Most people simply have no idea. The relationship between the moon and Earth began violently. Approximately 4.5 billion years ago, when our planet was still young, a Mars-sized planetesimal called Theia collided with proto-Earth. This cataclysmic impact, known as the giant impact hypothesis, first proposed by scientists William K. Hartmann and Donald R. Davis in 1975, ejected enormous amounts of debris into space. This material eventually coalesced to form the moon. The moon literally emerged from Earth itself, explains Dr. Ramirez. It is no wonder their relationship remains so intimate billions of years later. That relationship has been fundamental to life on Earth. The moon's gravitational pull stabilizes Earth's axial tilt, preventing the wild fluctuations that would otherwise occur. Without this stabilization, Earth's climate would be chaotic, with extreme seasonal variations that would make complex life forms, including humans, impossible. The moon essentially acts as Earth's balancing wheel, maintaining the environmental conditions necessary for our existence. But the moon's influence extends far beyond these broad planetary effects. Evidence increasingly suggests that lunar rhythms play a surprising role in regulating human biological processes and behaviors in ways science is only beginning to fully understand. The most obvious lunar effect on Earth is the ocean tides. The moon's gravitational pull creates a bulge in Earth's oceans on the side facing the moon and another bulge on the opposite side due to inertial forces. As Earth rotates, these bulges move across the planet's surface, creating the high and low tides experienced by coastal regions approximately every 12 hours and 25 minutes. The human body is approximately 60% water, Dr. Wilcox points out. If the moon can move oceans, might it not also influence the fluids within our bodies? This question has driven numerous scientific investigations over decades. In 2013, researchers at the University of Basel in Switzerland, led by Christian Kajochin, published a groundbreaking study in the journal Current Biology that provided compelling evidence for lunar influence on human sleep patterns. The team analyzed the sleep of 33 volunteers in a laboratory setting where factors such as light and temperature were controlled. Participants were unaware of the purpose of the study or the phase of the moon during their participation. The results were striking. During the full moon, participants took on average 5 minutes longer to fall asleep, experienced 30% less deep sleep, and reported lower sleep quality. Their melatonin levels, a hormone that regulates sleep, were also lower during the full moon phase. This occurred despite the participants being isolated from visual cues about the moon's phase. What makes this study particularly intriguing, says Dr. Ramirez, is that the participants were in a completely controlled environment with no knowledge of lunar phases. This strongly suggests an endogenous lunar rhythm in humans, something built into our physiology rather than merely a response to moonlight. This endogenous rhythm theory gained further support in 2016 when a team led by Dr. Leandro Casiraghi at the University of Washington monitored the sleep patterns of indigenous Toba/Com communities in Argentina. These communities had varying levels of access to electricity. The researchers found that in all communities, regardless of artificial light exposure, people went to bed later and slept less during full moon nights. The effect was most pronounced in communities without electricity, where sleep onset was delayed by about 40 minutes during the full moon. These findings suggest that human sleep is synchronous with lunar phases regardless of ethnic and sociocultural factors, notes Dr. Wilcox. This points to a deeply embedded biological connection between humans and lunar cycles. The scientific investigation of lunar effects on human biology represents a delicate balance. On one hand, researchers must navigate around the pseudoscientific concept of lunar lunacy, the debunked notion that the full moon causes mental illness or erratic behavior. On the other hand, they must remain open to discovering genuine biological connections that might exist between lunar cycles and human physiology. The challenge is separating fact from fiction, explains Dr. Ramirez. For centuries, folklore has attributed all manner of phenomena to the full moon, from werewolf transformations to surges in crime rates. Most of these claims do not stand up to scientific scrutiny. However, that does not mean the moon has no influence on human biology. It simply means we need rigorous science to identify what those influences actually are. One area where evidence for lunar influence has been particularly compelling involves reproductive biology. A 2021 study published in Science Advances by researchers at the University of Washington analyzed the menstrual records of 22 women over a 32-year period. They found that for women whose menstrual cycles were longer than 27 days, their periods were more likely to begin around the full moon. Conversely, women with cycles shorter than 27 days were more likely to menstruate during the new moon. This pattern aligns with observations in other species. Marine animals such as grunion fish, certain corals, and various crustaceans synchronize their reproductive cycles with lunar phases and the tides those phases create. The Pacific palolo worm releases its reproductive material during the last quarter moon in October and November. Even certain non-marine species, like the Serengeti wildebeest, show reproductive synchronization that correlates with lunar cycles. The evidence suggests that lunar entrainment of reproductive cycles is a widespread phenomenon in the animal kingdom, says Dr. Wilcox. And humans, despite our modern lifestyles and artificial lighting, still appear to retain some of this ancient biological programming. The moon might also influence human birth timing. A 2005 analysis by astronomer Daniel Cottone at Appalachian State University examined 564,039 births over a 5-year period and found a slight increase in births during the waxing phase of the lunar cycle, the period between new and full moon. This subtle pattern has been replicated in several subsequent studies, though the effect size is small, approximately a 1 to 2% increase in birth probability. The mechanism for this effect remains unclear, Dr. Ramirez admits. It might relate to changes in electromagnetic fields, subtle gravitational effects, or perhaps evolutionary adaptations that once provided advantages, such as giving birth during periods when nights were better illuminated by moonlight. Beyond reproduction and sleep, researchers have identified other aspects of human physiology that appear to be modulated by lunar cycles. A 2013 study published in Interactive Cardiovascular and Thoracic Surgery found that acute aortic dissection, a serious condition involving tearing in the inner layer of the aorta, occurred more frequently during full and new moons. The researchers examined 910 cases and found that the incidence was significantly higher during these lunar phases. Similarly, a comprehensive review published in German Medical Science in 2009 analyzed 42 studies on lunar effects on seizure activity. While the results were mixed, several well-designed studies found correlations between lunar phases and seizure frequency in epilepsy patients. One possible mechanism involves the moon's influence on the Earth's magnetic field, which some researchers suggest might affect neuronal excitability. The human brain evolved in an environment characterized by regular cosmic rhythms, explains Dr. Wilcox. The alternation of day and night, the changing seasons, and the lunar cycle have all been constant features of our evolutionary landscape. It would be surprising if our biology had not developed some form of synchronization with these cosmic patterns. Perhaps the most intriguing area of lunar influence concerns human behavior and psychology. While the term lunacy has been largely discredited in its traditional sense, more nuanced investigations have revealed subtle behavioral correlations with lunar phases. A 2007 study published in the World Journal of Surgery examined 15,029 emergency cases and found that while overall emergency incidence was not correlated with lunar phases, the nature of emergency cases did change. During full moons, there was a significant increase in cases involving gastrointestinal bleeding, acute coronary syndrome, and non-traumatic abdominal pain. Criminal behavior has also been examined through the lens of lunar influence. A 2016 study by researchers at the University of Washington analyzed data from 13 countries over a 45-year period and found a small but statistically significant increase in homicides and aggravated assaults during full moon periods. The effect was strongest in developing countries and in areas with less artificial lighting. These findings suggest that lunar effects on behavior might be more pronounced in environments where people remain more closely connected to natural light-dark cycles, notes Dr. Ramirez. In highly urbanized areas with constant artificial lighting, these effects appear to be attenuated. But why would the moon influence human behavior at all? One compelling theory involves melatonin, the same hormone implicated in lunar effects on sleep. Melatonin production is inhibited by light, including moonlight. During full moons, especially before widespread artificial lighting, nighttime illumination would have been significantly increased, potentially suppressing melatonin production. Melatonin does not just regulate sleep, explains Dr. Wilcox. It also influences mood, immune function, and has antioxidant properties. Lower melatonin levels during full moons might create a cascade of physiological effects that ultimately influence behavior. Another possibility involves what chronobiologists call circulunar rhythms, biological cycles that synchronize with the lunar month. Just as humans possess circadian rhythms that follow the 24-hour day, evidence suggests we might also have internal clocks that track the roughly 29.5-day lunar cycle. In 2021, biologists at the University of Washington discovered gene expression patterns in mice that followed lunar timing. This was particularly surprising because mice are nocturnal animals that have evolved largely independently of lunar light cycles. The findings suggest that lunar entrainment might be even more fundamental to mammalian biology than previously thought. If mice show lunar synchronized gene expression, it becomes even more plausible that humans, who evolved with much more direct adaptation to moonlight conditions, would retain similar lunar timing mechanisms, says Dr. Ramirez. The scientific investigation of lunar effects on humans represents a fascinating intersection of astronomy, biology, psychology, and evolutionary science. As researchers peel back layers of this complex relationship, they are discovering that the moon's influence is neither as dramatic as folklore suggests, nor as negligible as skeptics once assumed. We are uncovering a middle ground, explains Dr. Wilcox. The moon is not making people crazy, but it does appear to be subtly modulating aspects of human physiology and behavior through mechanisms we are just beginning to understand. One particularly fascinating area of investigation involves the moon's influence on Earth's magnetic field and how those fluctuations might affect human biology. The moon's gravitational pull creates small but measurable changes in Earth's magnetosphere, the region of space dominated by Earth's magnetic field. During certain lunar phases, particularly the new and full moon, these changes are more pronounced. The human body contains magnetite crystals, particularly in brain tissues. These biogenic magnetic particles can respond to external magnetic fields, potentially creating a biological mechanism for sensing geomagnetic fluctuations. In 2019, researchers at Caltech discovered that human participants could detect experimental magnetic fields, suggesting that humans may possess a subconscious magnetic sense similar to that used by some animals for navigation. If humans can indeed sense magnetic fields, says Dr. Ramirez, then lunar-induced fluctuations in Earth's geomagnetic field might represent another pathway through which the moon influences human biology. Water, which comprises the majority of the human body, also behaves differently under various magnetic conditions. The hydrogen bonds between water molecules can be altered by magnetic fields, potentially affecting cellular processes throughout the body. We know that living organisms are exquisitely sensitive to their environments. Dr. Wilcox points out, even subtle changes in environmental conditions can trigger cascades of biological responses. The regular lunar cycle provides a predictable pattern of environmental variation that life has had billions of years to adapt to. This adaptive relationship might explain another curious phenomenon, the correlation between lunar phases and hospital admissions for certain conditions. A comprehensive analysis published in the Journal of Emergency Medicine in 2015 examined 11,940 psychiatric emergency visits over a 10-year period and found an approximately 8% increase in visits during the full moon phase. The effect was most pronounced for anxiety disorders and mood disturbances. Similarly, a 2011 study in the Indian Journal of Psychological Medicine found that patients with schizophrenia showed increased psychotic symptoms during the full moon phase. The researchers monitored 91 patients over 12 lunar cycles and found statistically significant increases in symptom severity that correlated with full moons. These findings do not support supernatural explanations, clarifies Dr. Ramirez. Rather, they suggest that individuals with certain psychiatric conditions might be more sensitive to the subtle environmental changes that occur during full moon periods, such as altered light conditions or geomagnetic fluctuations. The moon's influence appears to extend to cardiovascular health as well. A 2013 study published in the Interactive Journal of Medical Research analyzed 1,437 patients who had suffered acute myocardial infarctions, heart attacks. The researchers found that heart attacks occurred more frequently during new moons and full moons than during other lunar phases. The effect was modest but statistically significant. The mechanism might involve changes in blood pressure, suggests Dr. Wilcox. Several studies have found that blood pressure tends to be slightly higher during full and new moons, potentially increasing cardiac stress in vulnerable individuals. This blood pressure connection points to another aspect of lunar influence, its effect on fluid dynamics within the body. Just as the moon creates tides in the ocean, it might induce subtle tidal forces in bodily fluids. While the gravitational effect on a human body is minuscule compared to the effect on oceans, biological systems can amplify even tiny physical inputs. Living systems are not passive recipients of physical forces, explains Dr. Ramirez. They actively respond to and often amplify environmental signals through complex feedback mechanisms. A small gravitational variation might trigger hormonal or nervous system responses that magnify the initial effect. This amplification might explain findings from a 2018 study published in Frontiers in Physiology that detected subtle changes in heart rate variability corresponding to lunar phases. The researchers monitored 16 healthy volunteers over 2 lunar cycles and found that heart rate variability, a measure of the variation in time between heartbeats, followed a pattern that corresponded with lunar phases. Heart rate variability was lowest during full and new moons and highest during quarter moons. Heart rate variability is controlled by the autonomic nervous system, notes Dr. Wilcox. This finding suggests that lunar cycles might be modulating fundamental aspects of our nervous system function. The autonomic nervous system controls many unconscious bodily functions, including digestion, respiration, pupillary response, and urination. This might explain another curious lunar correlation, changes in urinary output and kidney function. A 2015 study published in the Journal of Clinical Nephrology examined urine samples from 13,000 patients and found that protein excretion rates were higher during full moon phases. This finding aligns with earlier research showing increased incidence of renal colic, severe pain caused by kidney stones, during full moons. The kidneys are essentially filtering systems that respond to hormonal signals, explains Dr. Ramirez. If lunar cycles are influencing hormone levels, as several studies suggest, then changes in kidney function would be an expected downstream effect. Hormones represent a particularly important mechanism through which lunar cycles might influence human biology and behavior. The endocrine system, the collection of glands that produce hormones, is highly responsive to environmental cues, including light levels. The pineal gland, which produces melatonin, is especially sensitive to light exposure. A 2019 study in Chronobiology International monitored melatonin levels in 33 participants across multiple lunar cycles and found that melatonin production decreased by approximately 14% during full moon nights. This occurred even when participants slept in completely dark rooms, suggesting an endogenous lunar rhythm rather than just a response to moonlight. Melatonin is often called the dark hormone, says Dr. Wilcox. But these findings suggest that melatonin production might be responding to something beyond just light levels, perhaps an internal biological clock synchronized with lunar cycles. Beyond melatonin, other hormones show lunar correlations as well. A 2017 study in Endocrine Connections found that levels of adrenocorticotropic hormone, ACTH, which regulates cortisol production, varied with lunar phases. ACTH levels peaked during the full moon and reached their lowest point during the new moon. Cortisol is our primary stress hormone, Dr. Ramirez explains. Fluctuations in cortisol levels could potentially influence mood, energy levels, immune function, and cognitive performance, all of which have been anecdotally associated with lunar phases. Reproductive hormones also show lunar patterns. A 2021 analysis of data from 826 women found that levels of follicle-stimulating hormone, FSH, and luteinizing hormone, LH, both crucial for regulating the menstrual cycle, showed subtle but statistically significant variations corresponding to lunar phases. Peak levels occurred near the full moon for most participants. These hormonal fluctuations might help explain another curious phenomenon: changes in sexual behavior and desire that correlate with lunar cycles. A 2017 study published in the journal Sexologies analyzed anonymous data from a cycle tracking app used by over 15,000 women. The researchers found that sexual activity increased by approximately 5% during the full moon phase. Again, we have to be careful about attributing causation here, cautions Dr. Wilcox. Some of this effect might be cultural or psychological rather than purely biological. But the consistency of these patterns across diverse populations suggests some underlying biological mechanism. The evolutionary origins of these lunar influences remain speculative but intriguing. For much of human prehistory, the lunar cycle would have created predictable monthly variations in nighttime illumination. Before artificial lighting, the full moon would have extended the effective day, allowing for activities that would otherwise be impossible in the darkness. It is not difficult to imagine how synchronizing certain behaviors with the lunar cycle might have provided evolutionary advantages, suggests Dr. Ramirez. Reproductive timing, hunting strategies, gathering activities, all might have benefited from coordination with lunar illumination patterns. This evolutionary perspective helps explain why lunar effects appear to be more pronounced in traditional societies that remain more connected to natural light-dark cycles. A 2015 anthropological study of 4 indigenous communities in different parts of the world found that all showed increased communal activities, including rituals, hunting expeditions, and social gatherings, during full moon periods. The researchers noted that these communities explicitly recognized and planned around lunar illumination. Modern technology has buffered us from many natural cycles, notes Dr. Wilcox. Artificial lighting, climate control, and constant food availability have reduced our dependence on environmental patterns. Yet our biology still carries the imprint of these ancient relationships. This buffering effect of technology might explain why lunar influences often appear subtle in scientific studies of modern populations. The signal is there, but it is attenuated by the noise of contemporary lifestyles that override natural rhythms. Yet even in highly urbanized environments, certain lunar effects persist. A 2021 study using smartphone data from over 100,000 users found that sleep duration decreased by an average of 7 minutes during the full moon, regardless of urban light pollution levels. The effect was present even among users in major cities with significant light pollution. This suggests that some lunar influences operate through mechanisms beyond simple light exposure, says Dr. Ramirez. They might involve deeper biological rhythms that have been internalized over evolutionary time. One particularly fascinating aspect of lunar influence involves collective human behavior. Throughout history, communities have organized activities around lunar cycles. The word month itself derives from moon, reflecting the fundamental importance of lunar cycles in human timekeeping. Many religious observances and cultural festivals worldwide are still determined by lunar calendars. These cultural patterns might represent the social institutionalization of biological rhythms, suggests Dr. Wilcox. Communities recognized and formalized behaviors that naturally tended to occur in sync with lunar phases. Modern data analysis has revealed subtle lunar patterns in collective human behaviors that individuals might not consciously recognize. A 2018 study published in the Journal of Preventive Medicine analyzed Google search data and found that queries related to anxiety, depression, and mental distress increased during full moon periods. The effect was small, approximately a 3% increase, but consistent across multiple years and geographic regions. Similarly, financial markets show curious lunar correlations. A 2001 study in the Journal of Banking and Finance found that stock returns around the world are about twice as large in the 2-week period around new moon dates compared to the 2-week period around full moon dates. This pattern was observed in 48 countries over a 30-year period and remains a puzzling phenomenon. The stock market finding is particularly interesting because it involves complex collective behavior that participants themselves are likely unaware is following a lunar pattern, notes Dr. Ramirez. It suggests that lunar cycles might be modulating human psychology in subtle ways that then manifest in aggregated decision-making. Traffic accidents also show lunar correlations. A 2017 analysis of traffic data from the UK Department for Transport found that fatal accidents increased by 5.3% during full moon nights compared to other nights. The effect was even more pronounced during supermoon events, when the moon is both full and at its closest approach to Earth, with accident rates increasing by 12.5%. Decreased sleep quality during full moons might contribute to reduced alertness and increased accident risk, suggests Dr. Wilcox. But other factors might be involved as well, such as subtle effects on visual perception or decision-making. The biological mechanisms underlying these various lunar effects likely involve multiple systems working in concert. The most obvious pathway is through light moonlight affecting melatonin production through the eyes and suprachiasmatic nucleus, the brain's primary circadian pacemaker. But other mechanisms appear to be operating as well. Gravitational effects, while minuscule at the individual level, might trigger physiological cascades that amplify the initial signal. Geomagnetic fluctuations induced by lunar positioning might affect brain function in subtle ways. And endogenous circulunar clocks, internal timekeeping mechanisms that have evolved to track the lunar cycle, might regulate physiological processes independent of immediate environmental cues. What we are discovering is a complex web of influence, explains Dr. Ramirez. The moon is not controlling human behavior in a deterministic sense. Rather, it is subtly modulating multiple biological systems that then influence behavior through downstream effects. The scientific exploration of lunar effects represents a fascinating case study in how natural cycles continue to influence human biology despite modern technological buffers. It also illustrates the importance of methodological rigor when investigating subtle phenomena. The history of this research area contains many examples of poor methodology leading to exaggerated claims, cautions Dr. Wilcox. Statistical issues like the multiple comparisons problem, confirmation bias, and inadequate sample sizes have plagued this field. The genuine effects that do exist are typically small and require large datasets and careful controls to detect reliably. As research methodologies improve and larger datasets become available, the scientific understanding of lunar influences continues to develop. Modern tools like wearable physiological monitors, smartphone sleep tracking, and big data analysis are enabling more precise investigations than were previously possible. A particularly promising approach involves genetic analysis. Researchers are now identifying genes that show expression patterns correlated with lunar phases. A 2021 study published in Science Advances identified 112 genes in mice whose expression followed lunar timing. Many of these genes were involved in neurological function and hormone regulation. The genetic evidence is especially compelling, notes Dr. Ramirez. It provides a molecular basis for lunar influences and helps explain why these effects might persist, even in the absence of direct environmental cues like moonlight. The clinical implications of lunar influences remain an active area of research. Several studies have examined whether medical procedures might have different outcomes depending on the lunar phase. A 2013 analysis published in Interactive Cardiovascular and Thoracic Surgery found that patients who underwent aortic dissection surgery during full moon phases had shorter hospital stays and lower mortality rates compared to patients operated on during other lunar phases. Conversely, a 2018 study in the Journal of Arthroplasty found that total hip and knee arthroplasties performed during the full moon were associated with slightly longer hospital stays and higher rates of certain complications. The researchers analyzed 17,394 procedures and found statistically significant differences based on lunar timing. These findings are intriguing but should be interpreted cautiously, warns Dr. Wilcox. Many factors influence surgical outcomes, and lunar phase is likely just one of many variables. Still, the patterns are consistent enough to warrant further investigation. For the average person, awareness of lunar influences might have practical applications. Understanding that sleep quality tends to decrease during full moons might prompt individuals to take extra measures to ensure restful sleep during these periods, such as using blackout curtains or adjusting bedtime routines. Similarly, recognition of potential changes in mood, stress levels, or cognitive function during certain lunar phases might help individuals better manage their emotional and mental states. This awareness represents not a return to superstition but rather an integration of scientific understanding about natural cycles into personal wellness strategies. Modern life often disconnects us from natural rhythms, reflects Dr. Ramirez. Reconnecting with these cycles, including the lunar cycle, might have benefits for physical and psychological well-being. The broader philosophical implications of lunar influence are equally fascinating. The recognition that cosmic cycles continue to affect human biology challenges the notion that modern humans have fully transcended their natural origins. Despite our technological sophistication, we remain biological organisms embedded in planetary and cosmic rhythms. There is something humbling about this realization, says Dr. Wilcox. For all our intellectual achievements, our bodies still respond to the same celestial dance that has been influencing life on Earth for billions of years. This perspective aligns with growing scientific appreciation for the importance of natural cycles in human health. From circadian biology to seasonal affective disorder, research increasingly confirms that alignment with natural rhythms promotes well-being, while disruption of these rhythms can contribute to various health problems. Looking up at the moon through his telescope, Dr. Ramirez contemplates the ancient relationship between humans and Earth's celestial companion. When we gaze at the moon, we are looking at a force that has shaped not just Earth's geology and climate, but also the very rhythms of life itself, including human life. And the most fascinating part, adds Dr. Wilcox, is that we are still discovering new aspects of this relationship. The scientific story of the moon's influence on humans is still being written. As our understanding of lunar effects continues to develop, It offers a beautiful example of how modern science can illuminate connections that ancient cultures intuited but lacked the tools to fully explain. The moon's quiet control over aspects of human biology and behavior represents not supernatural mysticism, but rather the subtle, elegant influence of cosmic rhythms on life on Earth. The next time you find yourself unable to sleep during a full moon, Dr. Ramirez suggests, remember that you are experiencing one small aspect of a relationship between Earth and Moon that stretches back billions of years. A relationship written into the very fabric of your biology. Under the moonlight, as most of humanity sleeps, these cosmic connections continue their quiet work, a testament to the deep intertwining of life on Earth with the wider rhythms of our solar system. The moon's silent influence reminds us that we are not merely inhabitants of Earth but participants in a grand cosmic dance, our bodies and behaviors subtly guided by forces as ancient as the moon itself.